Hello, and thank you for joining us today for the next in our WS Primer series. Today we're talking about termination, which is a new process for the 2018-19 academic year. As always, we like to start out each presentation by pointing out that this video, as well as a number of others, can be found on the WS Supervisor Resources page, which you can find by simply doing a Google search for UNC Work Study and then clicking on the Supervisor Resources link in the middle of the page. It takes you to a screen that looks very similar to what you see before you. And on the left hand side under the training section are all of the WS Primer videos, which are deep dives into individual topics within the work study program that you as a supervisor might need more information on, or simply a refresher session on. So please feel free to utilize our training, and as you can see on the screen, resources and tools, all of that information is contained on this page and there for your usage. So let's talk about why a student might need to be terminated from their position within the work study program. There's three groups of reasons. The first is that the student's requesting it. They're graduating, studying abroad, they're unable to dedicate the time to the position that's needed, it's not as good of a fit, or they found a job that's a better fit. All of these things happen on a fairly regular basis. While most of our students do find positions that they stay with for the full academic year, of course these reasons do come up. The second group are program requested. So the work study program will terminate a position because it is the end of the academic year and therefore the end of the year that students can be working. The position was for a single semester. For example, it's a fall-only job and we've reached the end of the fall. Or if a student has had their award revised and they are no longer eligible to continue working because they have earned the full amount of their work study funds. The third group is, of course, employer requested. These are honestly the most uncommon of the reasons, but they do exist. So if you as a supervisor are having problems with absenteeism or time issues that aren't being corrected, if you need to terminate the student because they've done such a great job that you're ready to promote them or assign them to a new position, or if there's any performance issues that you have tried to correct and the student has not been successful in improving their performance, all of these are perfectly legitimate reasons to move forward with the termination process. So, in general, the termination process varies with which of these three categories and the sub-reasons for the termination. But in general, before proceeding with the termination, you as a supervisor should always talk to the student and try and resolve the situation before proceeding with termination. Terminating a student without speaking to them in most cases is against university policy, departmental policy, and work study program policy. You'll always want to make sure that you've documented any conversations you have with a student regarding termination, especially if there is a performance base, i.e. You have a student who is having some absenteeism issues. You want to document the conversations where you've outlined your policy on tardiness or absenteeism, so that if you do move forward with terminating the student, you can recall exactly when you've discussed the topic with the student and the performance modifications that you've come up with contractually have not been met. You'll also want to work with your human resources officer or shared services center, depending on which department you're in, to make sure that those individual requirements of your department are being met. And of course, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to my team. You can find us at work-study.unc.edu. So there's several circumstances where a student might be terminated and the termination form isn't required. These are normally good reasons. The student's graduating, they've reached the end of a fall posting, fall-only posting, and it's the end of fall, they've earned the full amount of their award, or they've reached out to you as a supervisor that they're not going to be moving forward with a work study position, often because they're studying abroad or graduating or taking some time off, those sorts of situations. In any of those circumstances, you are not required to complete this termination form that we've developed. So we will get notification that the student is leaving that position through other sources. If, however, one of these reasons apply, the student is ending their employment and they want to work somewhere else, there's a performance-related issue that is the reason for their termination, you, as the supervisor, simply have already seen the student leave the position and you don't wish to be contacted about any changes to the position or the student's award, the student's moving to a different position within the same department, i.e. a promotion, for example, or really any situation in which you want to make sure that your ties to this position are officially severed. That's when you use the termination form. Now, what is the form? We've talked a little bit about it. It's new for 1819, and it's a way of us being able to update the JobX system to show that that student's employment has been terminated, and yet still maintain a record of the student's employment prior to that point. It also is an informative online form in that it spells out the situations that we're discussing here about why you might want to terminate a student and what steps you need to take prior to doing so. It does require just a little bit of information input on your part, information about you as the supervisor so that we can make sure we're looking at the right position, the student's information so we can make sure we're looking at the right student, and of course the 4-digit JobX job ID so that we make the modifications to the right place in JobX. The question that might be arising at this point is, hey, we've gotten through the process without a termination form in the past. What's changed? Why is it necessary? The biggest thing is we needed to be able to terminate students and keep a record of that termination, which was something that JobX was not capable of. And so we have a lot of students who are trying to move between jobs, and we need a record of the prior position in case we have any questions or need to follow up with the student or the supervisor about anything related to the student's prior employment, normally in the form of wages. Since the system limits the student to being employed at one position at a time, we needed a way to track that prior position. So in effect, it's a way to both formalize the process, to provide some guidance to you as a supervisor, and most importantly, to provide tracking that the change has occurred and the termination has been processed. So, how do you get the termination form? It's pretty simple. You can email work-study@unc.edu. Thomas or I will reach out to you to provide a link to that form, or you can utilize the link in front of you. Simply navigate to that page and you'll be able to complete the form. Before doing so, of course, you want to make sure that you've dotted the I's and crossed the T's, that you're in compliance with departmental, university, and work-study policy. Again, the steps for the university and the work-study program are outlined on this form. So you'll reach the form, one of these two ways on the screen. You'll complete it, submit it, and you will wait for a response from our team. So once we receive the form, which happens automatically as soon as you've completed it, Thomas and I will work very hard to try and process the requested changes as soon as possible. We shoot for the same business day, but realistically, especially during the business season, it may take 3 to 5 business days to complete the changes in JobX. Once we have made the modifications, you can expect an email addressed to you and CCing the student who's been terminated. We'll notify you that the termination has taken place as requested, and we will repost that position if it has been delisted with an additional vacancy, so that you don't need to make any further modifications in order to hire someone to replace the student who has been terminated. As far as additional steps that you'll need to take, you should reach out to your HR officer or shared services center if you're going to be terminating that student. So if you are simply promoting the student to a different position, say at the same wage rate, your HR officer or shared services center doesn't have to be a part of the process. If you're changing the pay rate, if you are removing the student in Connect, Carolina, you definitely want to reach out to HR. When you receive the email, again, you'll see that JobX has been modified. The number of vacancies for that position will be increased by 1. We will repost the position for the same time frame. So if it's an academic year position for fall spring and you've terminated the student even into the spring semester, we will repost it for fall spring. At this point, you as a supervisor have a few options. You can move that job to the review queue, which will remove it from further applications being received. Or you can sort of leave it listed, in which case you'll accumulate new applications for the position. However, if you would like to, say, delist the position, let's say it's a fall spring job, you've terminated a student at the end of the fall term, you might want to create a spring-only posting. This is a couple of benefits will come out of this. The first is that you have, if you're recruiting for spring and the job says spring, you're more likely to get students to apply to the position. The other one is it gives you an opportunity to modify the posting If we are bringing in a new vacancy to replace someone, the posting can't be modified if we are after the posting deadline. So if the deadline for fall posting is August 30th and we process the termination in November, we can create the vacancy, we can repost the position, but we can't modify what the posting says. Alright, that's all there is to termination. Simple form. I hope you understand what needs to be done and how it can be useful and how to utilize the tool. As always, I'm Josh Leonard, and on behalf of Thomas Harper, we are the Work Study Program team. Thank you so much for taking a look at this video. If you have questions or if you need any assistance, please feel free to reach out to us at work-study@unc.edu, or you can navigate to our webpage. You can see the URL there, or simply Google UNC Work Study, and again, the supervisor resources can be accessed through a link in the middle of that page. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.